Are we beginning? Good evening, everyone. Put our palms together, and then we will recite Namo Amitofu. Homage to Namo Amitofu. Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha. Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha. Please put your palms down. All the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the Dharma masters, Amitofu, and all students. Today is our class, the 5th unit for the Buddhist classics of 3 words. Starting from here, we're talking about the Chinese Buddhism. Here, there are 10 chapters to introduce the Chinese Buddhism. First one, we're talking about the eastward expansion of Buddhism. The other 9 chapters will be talking about the 10 schools that's being started. Starting from last week, we will have 3 classes from next week talking about that. So today, we will just focus on the Buddhism expansion into China. The situations and the histories around Buddhism transferred into China has a lot of different stories. Now, the story of the Emperor Ming having a dream of the golden figure, that's the most famous one. Now, in the Buddhist classic text, this is how it goes. Emperor Ming of the Han Dynasty dreamed of a golden figure. So he sent Cai Ying to seek the sage's teaching. Kasyapa Matanga and Dharmaraksa brought the sutras and Buddha images and translated the first sutra, the sutra of 42 sections. In here, 4 important people were mentioned: the Emperor Ming, Cai Ying, Kasyapa Matanga, and Dharmaraksa. The Emperor Ming, he is the 2nd king in the Han Dynasty. According to the histories, in AD 64, he had a dream of a golden figure who's flying above his royal hall. Once he woke up, and he started to ask his cabinet, so is this an auspicious or has a bad meaning? At the time, there's a historian, Fu Yi, answered the emperor. Now, I remember reading in one of the historical texts named Zhou Dynasty recordings. And in there, it was in the Zhou Dynasty, which was BC about 1700. Before the emperor was leaving, there were a lot of flooding and also earthquakes. And then the sky opened up to many colors and brilliant colors. So then the emperor at the time asked, why is this happening? So Suyo used the Book of Change to address that, and then understood that there is a sage who's born in the West. This great sage will be spreading a teaching in India, and then 1,000 years later, this teaching will arrive to China. So that historian at the time has told the emperor that now counting 1,000 years forward, now is around the time that the Buddhism may be arriving. So perhaps your dream is talking about that. So then the Han emperor had sent ambassador Cai Yi and also key people in the cabinet, a team of them, to head to India and to seek the Buddhism. Cai Ying, who has been sent to us to seek Buddhism, traversing what's now called Afghanistan, has actually met Dharma Raksa and Kasyapa Matanga, and had met those Dharma masters teaching Buddhism in India. And upon seeing the Buddha statues and the sutras, was delighted to have seen those, then eagerly invited the Dharma masters to come to China to spread Buddhism. So the two Dharma masters used the white horses to carry all of the sutras to go back to China. And after several years, so 3 years after the emperor who had had the dream of the golden figure, they finally arrived to China. And this is when the conditions has ripened for the Buddhism to start in China. Now, the emperor has invited the two Dharma masters to stay in a temple called Honglu Temple. This is a place that was specific for inviting the foreign guests to have a stay there. And that's when the two Dharma masters were translating the sutras. One of the most important one is the Sutra of 42 sections, which that's the sutra that signals the beginning of Buddhism in China. Now, as they are staying at the temple, because to commemorate the fact that they have traversed India to China with the white horse, they have changed the name of the temple into the White Horse Temple. And that temple became the first temple in China. The word temple has also been associated with the Chinese government and institutions around the Buddhist practices. So there's Tan Temple or Buddhist temple. Ming Emperor was very gladly having them, the Dharma master, to be sharing Buddhism in China. However, at the time, the Taoist practitioners in China are envious and they want to chase the Buddhism out. So here are the texts on the PowerPoint. The adherents of Taoism indulged an evil intent and made a contest to set the sutras on fire. So after 4 years of the Buddhism arrived in China, thousands of the Taoist practitioners decided to have a competition to see which of the teaching is truer. What they petitioned was to set up 2 of the platforms and then have a competition of displaying the Taoist sutras and the Buddhist sutras to see which one will be kept intact and not be burned. And so the emperor gave the permission for that. So now here, the text, the last 4 texts, the Taoist scriptures were burned while the Buddhist sutras remained intact. The brilliant light emitted from the sutras shone on both humans and gods. So once the competition started, it's as the verse say that the Buddhist sutras has remained intact, and the Taoist practitioners were very embarrassed and also horrified. And at the time, the Dharma Raksa decided to use the spiritual powers, went to the sky and started sharing Dharma with everyone. And everyone who were witnessing this were really moved. And so many of them decided to become Buddhist practitioners. And this is when the Buddhism has reached its triumph. Now, having seen by himself the amazing scene that has happened right in front of him, he was very, very excited. And a lot of the people at the time wanted to go into monastic. This is where you see the verse here. All the good men and women awakened faith in their hearts. They sought to enter monastic life and to realize the way. So that's why the emperor allowed the building of 10 monastics, 3 for nuns inside the city and 7 outside the city limits for the monks, so that they can continue to focus on cultivating the way. And the 3 jewels that we're referring here is the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So the first Buddhist treasure are the Buddhist statues that were brought from India. The sutras are that they brought are the Dharma, the second treasure. And then the 2 Dharma masters, as well as the many who decided to go into monastics, are the Sangha. So it's as the verse reads in here, then 10 monasteries were built for monks and nuns to live. The 3 treasures were thus established for the first time in China. So around the time the Buddhism that has entered into China was when the Mahayana was very popular in India. However, it was Theravada, or the lesser vehicle, that was the one that entered first into China, and then Mahayana came later. So there's a differentiation with Theravada and Mahayana. In the beginning, when it entered China, there was no divisions of these 2 schools. However, as time goes by, with lots more of the scriptures being translated, the different sages and patriarchs and virtuous masters have started to systematically organize into the different schools, which is how the 10 schools came to be. The 10 schools are, for China and beyond, has reached a very influential stage. All these 10 schools have each has its specific characteristics, and we will delve into those deeper later. So now we can say the fact that it has become really prominent, it's because of the translation that has started in the Han Dynasty. So we're going to look into the Chinese Sutra translation, which is divided into 3 stages. First one began from the Han Dynasty, and the first sutra that was translated at the time. So that's what it's called the beginning stage. It's from the year AD 64 to 316, with the dynasties crossing Eastern Han, the 3 Kingdom, and Western Jin dynasties. Most of the translations are individuals, and much of these were not translations that came from India. They're mostly coming from Central Asia. And the language that was translated from were from the local languages in Central Asia. Many of the foreign monks who traveled to China, they were using their own spare time outside of their teachings to do the translation. That's why it's not systematic, and it is only a few short sutras and small chapters here and there. Also, the literary styles have varied, and the terms were not consistent throughout the text. So we can see how challenging it was in the beginning stages of translating. Master Hua was sharing how in the beginning there was a Dharma master who came from India. This monastic Vigana, he came, and his Chinese was really poor, but he was willing to translate. So how was he able to translate with the poor Chinese? He looked at each and every character in the dictionary, translating 1 character at a time. Now, although he came up with translation, it did not roll off the tongue well. Later, his translation were unfortunately lost during the periods of wars and chaos. But his meritorious virtues from translating the sutra is still really great. From this story, we can really see that during this beginning stage, the conditions for sutra translation were really difficult. And here, the representatives too were also able to see that from An Shigao, who focused on the Theravada Tan, and also Lokaksema, that focused on Mahayana's Prajna text. Now, in the development stage, the second stage, it's around years AD 317 to 589, which is in the Eastern Jin, North and South dynasties. At this time, the translation has been placed an importance by the institution and the government. And so more and more of the translators, the Dharma masters translating came from India, who are well versed in Sanskrit and they understand Chinese as well. And China at this time started with official translating institutions so that they're able to do the translation. With this setup, this directly impacted the development of the Chinese Buddhism and the thinking and the learning. The representatives here are Kumarajiva Dharma Master and Zhendi and Paramartha Dharma Master. Now, Kumarajiva is the translator for the past 7 Buddhas. In the past, the 7 Buddhas who have spoken of the sutras have been translated all by this Dharma master Kumarajiva. So Kumarajiva's translation is very precise and also very elegant. Now, before he went into stillness, he said, I have translated many sutras throughout my life. I don't know if my translations are all correct or whether I've made mistakes. If all of my translations are free of mistake, then after I die, my body is cremated, my tongue will not be burned. If my translations have mistakes, then my tongue will be burned. So after the master entered stillness and was cremated, it was found that the tongue remained whole and unscathed by the fire. This proved that his translations have completely expressed the Buddha's intent and were free of mistakes. Now, many of the sutras that have been translated, we are quite familiar, including Amitabha Sutra, Vajra Sutra, Lotus Sutra, Brahmanet Sutra, and Vimalakirti Sutra. Now, with the third stage, the Golden Age. Now, although the Chinese have been involved in the first 2 periods of translation, the main translators were still from India and Central Asia. Starting from Tang Dynasty, however, the sutra translations have been directed by eminent Chinese monks, with Xuanzang Dharma Master and Jin Yijing Fashi as the preeminent leaders. Not only were they fluent in Sanskrit and Chinese, their understanding and insight of Buddhism were vast and profound. This was especially the case for Dharma Master Xuanzang, who traveled for 12 years throughout India in learning and established a translation institute. Now, over 3,000 people have participated in sutra translation. This was the peak of the canonical translation in China and the golden age of Buddhism in China. It also marked the major contribution in establishing various schools of Buddhism in China. Besides Xuanzang Master, there's Subhakaras Sima, Vajrabodhi, and Amoghavajra, who were the 3 Dharma Masters extensively translating sutras of esoteric teachings. With all these translations and going through all these dynasties, the whole translation system has been much more organized. Now, what we refer as the Great Tripitaka it does not refer to only one of the sutra, but it is for all of the Buddhist texts. And here we can also see it's a collection of the Chinese Buddhist sutras, Vinaya, and Shastras. And then the main versions are in Chinese, Tibetan, and Pali Tripitakas, plus also in Japanese and the Tangut. Now, with the DRBA's mission for translating all of the Buddhist sutras is also what Master Hua has vowed to do. Now, there are many of the volunteers involved have also participated in the sutra translation. And because of the support, then that's why the English speakers are able to join the online Buddhist class. So this is why the Venerable Master Hua would be giving them a lot of the praises and for commemorating the efforts, despite not always doing the best in the translation. Now, Buddhism has been introduced to China for more than 2,000 years, and the Tripitaka has been compiled more than 10 times. The Tripitaka, compiled in different eras, differed in style and content, and the volumes collected has increased from the 5,000 to now more than 10,000 volumes. In addition to the increase of Chinese translations of Buddhism Sutra, the compilers of various eras also continue to the collection and supplement materials relevant to Buddhism. Now, in this particular stage in the 7th century, because of the destruction of the Buddhism, the Fangshan Stone Sutras carving project has also started in this time. So around the Song dynasty, a lot of these have been handwritten texts. So around the year 971, this is when finally the block printing has been evolved. And because the block print has appeared, it had made the distribution and the printing of the Great Tripitaka a lot more efficient. Now, from the 20th century onward, with the accelerating development of digital technology transformed the blocky, space-consuming paper Tripitaka, we're now able to access the free file that can be downloaded on a phone or a laptop with the press of a button. The digital transformation has shattered boundaries of space and time in relation to the distribution of the Tripitaka, such that one can, in any place or any time, can deeply enter the sutra treasury and have wisdom like the sea. Speaking of the Chinese Buddhism, we must also talk about the Confucianism, Taoism, and the relationship between the three. Before Buddhism spread to China, the Chinese people's outlook on life, the world, and the value system were deeply influenced by Confucianism and Taoism. After Buddhism was introduced into China, it was integrated with Confucianism and Taoism, making the Buddhism, which originated in India, gradually became an important part of Chinese culture. Regarding the three teachings of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism, Master Hua has a simple analogy. He said Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism are one family, but one is the child, the other is middle-aged person, and the last one is elderly person. Confucianism is like elementary school for a kid, teaching basic principle of being a human being. Taoism is like secondary school, and only Buddhism is for the elderly, much like a university course, which is designed for those who have matured in experience and thinking. It contains all as it is all-inclusive and all-encompassing. Now, how are the three as one family? Confucianism teaches loyalty and forgiveness. Taoism teaches influence and response. Buddhism teaches kindness and compassion. The presentation of the three characters, loyalty, forgiveness, influence, response, kindness, and compassion, all are very much have mind at the bottom. That's why we say the three teachings as one family. Now, with the Confucianism only knows of worldly Dharma and talks about the 5 relationships and 8 virtues. The 5 relationships are one's older sibling, younger sibling, father, mother, and ancestors. The 8 virtues are loyalty, filial respect, benevolence, love, trustworthiness, righteousness, harmony, and peace. The Taoism teaches people to let go of desires and love, but it is not explicit and certain as Buddhism indicates. Buddhism advocates world-transcending Dharma, teaching people to understand one's mind and see one's nature in order to understand the true reality of life, leave the cycle of birth and death, and eventually attain ultimate liberation. Therefore, it is said, these 3 are 3 in 1 and 1 in 3. So the 3 of them are extensions of each other, and they are like roads paving one after the other. Now, with today's class, we're having discussion. So there's a characteristics of how after the more than 2 millennia of change, it is very special because it has a lot of integration, but also not the same as the Buddhism from India. So it is very unique, the Chinese Buddhism, especially with integration with Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism, and also the compilation of the Great Tripitaka. So if you could all discuss, besides the ones you see on the slide, the characteristics that's listed, which are more of the special characteristics. So now we can go into the discussion and then we can come back. After the discussion, then we can come back and share what else have you found to be the Chinese characteristics of Chinese Buddhism. All good?
经常是我们全部回来了。
Okay. I mute myself. Yeah. 好，那个讨论中国佛教独有的特色，所以今天
When talking about the unique aspects of Chinese Buddhism, we'll first ask the Chinese groups to share. So may the first group first share. Those with the one afterwards.
好的，阿弥陀佛法师，我们这组的讨论结果是一个
what they got from their discussion was that in Buddhism, regarding meals or food, it's vegetarianism. Also, they don't go on alms around. And regarding clothing or what they wear, in Indian Buddhism, they kind of bare the right shoulder. But Chinese Buddhism is a robe with sash and a hook. So an entire robe that covers the entire body. Also in Chinese Buddhism, there is the Chan school and other schools, which we will talk about in later classes. And so that's it. So mostly food or dietary restrictions and clothing. Do other groups have anything else to share?
可以给英文翻译一下。
我们组是G 组哈，我们组还提到
等一下，他等一下，那个同学等一下，那个是不是要等英文翻译？
对
刚刚英
，Michael
文翻译已经同时进行了，我有在听 Michael 同时翻了。
哦
好，
，OK，好，
那居主要发言。
OK，
Okay, there's another group.
总结的是从哲学方面，我们是
They approached it from a philosophical perspective.
音乐方面，我们
There is the Sutra on filiality.
不一样的。
There are also different types of chants specific to Chinese culture, as well as in terms of medicinal techniques. There's acupuncture, medicinal grasses. And then there's also, for example, Dhyana Master Bai Zhang, who has created rules for the monastery, as well as getting rid of the lay names and surnames. Also, Guanyin Bodhisattva manifested as a woman, and Earth Store Bodhisattva appeared as a Korean monk and also has monasteries in China as well.
这是第几组啊？
刚才说的是我们是第 G 组，
然后好
So
像
this was from Group G.
F 组
Now Group F.
强佛友，
好的，阿弥陀佛。那大家好，各位法师、大德，这些善知识，大家好，我是 F 组的杨一杰。我们走，大概是我说的比较多，然后其他人都没讲。那我简单。
He said that he shared mostly during the discussion his own views. And he wants to talk about 2 points. First point is that there are kind of language perspective. There's, for example, the names of different people, the relative aspects of different terms.
对这个语言化的这个影响。那么
And so this is kind of how Buddhism influenced the Chinese language. And now also, there are also Buddhist statues. And so Buddhist statues have kind of increased their variety in Chinese Buddhism. So from the 1st century AD until today, the various changes have occurred. And so kind of the main point is that Chinese Buddhist statues is different from Indian Buddhist statues in terms of color, in terms of the sitting posture, and also the clothing that the Buddhas wear. So besides Shakyamuni Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, and Medicine Master Buddha, as well as all other bodhisattvas in Chinese Buddhism, in Indian Buddhism, it's focused mainly on Shakyamuni Buddha and not on other Buddhas and bodhisattvas. So we are close to time, so you can only share to this. But in summary, there's a lot of regarding kind of dietary restrictions and clothing that's unique to Chinese Buddhism, as well as architectural aspects, as well as how Buddhist statues and paintings are created. And furthermore, now Chinese Buddhism has been spread to the West. For example, chanting. DRBA has now created English versions of some of the ceremonies. And so there's a lot of kind of assimilation and integration with local cultures. And so in the future, Western Buddhism might show even more differences compared to Indian Buddhism and Chinese Buddhism. And so that is something that we can anticipate and look forward to. Now, the next slide will show the homework for the next class.
我怎么分享作业 ？OK， 是这个吗？
还没看到，你可能要 new share 吧 ？OK， yeah, OK. Then you do presentation skill, presentation view. Yeah.
我 stop share.
And you do a new share.
它就
Yeah. 然后你要按那个下面那个。
它有 share sound optimized for video clip.
No need. You just share will do. 然后你这边你就去 click 那个下面那个你每次要做 presentation 的那个 icon， 对你现在的那个 cursor 的地方。
看到了吗？
Yeah， 对，看到了。
这个吗
？Yes.
OK， 所以这个荧幕上显示。
So what we see on the screen is homework for the next class, where we talked about how there was a Buddhist Taoist rivalry during the Eastern Han Dynasty when sutras from both religions were put into fire to test. Taoist sutras were burned while Buddhist sutras were unscathed, and this proved the line from the Vajra Sutra, where there are sutras, there is the Buddha. So the question to everyone is, how should Buddhists properly show respect towards sutra texts? So this is something that people can think about and answer at home for the next class. So now we'll do dedication of merit.
那我们现在一起来做这个回向。愿以此功德庄严佛净土，上报四重恩，下济三途苦。若有见闻者，悉发菩提心，尽此一报身，同生极乐国。顶礼老和尚。
谢谢静常师，
阿弥陀佛，
阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，
感恩法师，阿弥陀佛。
老师，
老师。
Yeah, the English side needs to get out of the English.